Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 11, The Pastimes of Krishna, and text 43 to 45. So I'll just do a Sanskrit translation by myself for the first one, and then maybe the last verse, we can maybe take a few people who can repeat. So text 43, Grihitva parapadabhyam sahalangulam achyutah brahmayitva kapitagre prahinodgata jivitam sakapitair mahakaya patyamanai pataha. Thereafter, Sri Krishna caught the demon by the hind legs and tail and twirled the demon's whole body very strongly until the demon was dead, and threw him into the top of a kapita tree, which then fell down along with the body of the demon, who had assumed a great form. Purport: Krishna killed the demon in such a way as to get the kapita fruits to fall, so that he and Balaram and the other boys could take advantage of the opportunity to eat them. The kapita tree is sometimes called Shat Bel Phala. The pulp of this fruit is very palatable. Text 44. Tam Viksha Vismita Balaha Shashamshu Sadhu Sadviti Devascha Parisantushta Babu Pushpavarshinaha. Translation. Upon seeing the dead body of the demon, all the cowherd boys exclaimed, "Well done, Krishna. Very good, thank you." In the upper planetary system, all the demigods were pleased, and therefore they showered flowers on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And text 45. So we don't have it displayed. So maybe I can just do it by myself. In the interest of time, we just have 45 minutes. So that's why I didn't do Jai Radha Madhava. Maybe we can have more time for discussion. In my mind, I'll offer that. So text 45. Tauvatsa palakau bhutva sarvalokai kapalakau sapratar ashau govatsams charayanto vicheratuhu. Translation, text 45. After the killing of the demon, Krishna and Balaram finished their breakfast in the morning, and while continuing to take care of the calves, they wandered here and there. Krishna and Balaram, the Supreme Personalities of Godhead, who maintained the entire creation, now took charge of the calves as if cowherd boys. Purport: Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. Krishna's daily business here in this material world was to kill the dushkritis. This did not hamper his daily affairs, for it was routine work. While he tended the calves on the bank of the river Yamuna, 2 or 3 incidences took place every day, and although these were serious, killing the demons one after another appeared to be his daily routine work. I beg for the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas, especially our senior devotees who may be present online, that may we have a fruitful discussion of Bhagavatam, which is in line with the Guru Parampara. So this is chapter 11, the childhood pastimes of Krishna. And so far what happens in this chapter is Krishna has just finished bringing down the twin Arjuna trees, and all the cowherd boys the elderly gopas are alarmed by what just happened, and little boys give some explanation, and the elderly gopas, they just dismiss that, thinking, oh, our little Krishna could not have done that. And the chapter goes on to sort of describe the childhood pastimes of Krishna, about the fruit vendor lady and how Krishna approaches her in a really cute way. And then seeing all the disturbances in Vrindavan, on the ground, all the elderly gopas headed by Nanda and Upananda, they decide that this place is a little unsafe for baby Krishna. A lot of inauspicious things are happening. So they unanimously decide to sort of move to Hare Krishna Prabhu. So they unanimously decide to move to Vrindavan, because it's like there's greener pastures, tall mountains, and so on. And then Krishna and Balaram, they grow up, and the chapter describes how they're busy playing with their cowherd playmates, and Rohini Maya tries to get them, and Krishna and Balaram are too busy with their activities. So Krishna and Balaram are too busy with their activities of playing, and then Yashoda then goes to grab Krishna, and so on. The chapter describes about how Krishna and Balaram are growing nicely. So this is the first demon, quote unquote, demon that Krishna kills in Vrindavan. So that's Vatsasura. So that's what's being described in these sections, text 43 to 45, about how Krishna kills the demons. And as Krishna kills, all the cowherd boys say, sadhu, sadhu. That's like, good job, good job. Like our Guru Maharaj, when he has to sort of praise someone, he'll say, sadhu, sadhu. So it's like the language of Bhagavatam, saying, good job, Krishna. So we see Krishna is, in the prayers composed by Rupa Goswami, Krishna is called as Go Brahmana Hitaicha, Namo Brahmana, Go Brahmana Hitaicha, that he's the well-wisher of Go, which is cows and Brahmanas. So here we see that a demon in the shape of a calf is trying to mix with other calves that Krishna. So Krishna and Balaram are still smaller, so they're not in charge of the big cows yet. So they've been given charge of the calves. So one of the demons thinking it'll be really easy kill if I can just be one of the calves, and Krishna and Balaram, they're not gonna know. They'll think that we're just one of the many thousand calves they have. So we can sort of mix in with the herd. And then when they're not watching, we can sort of kill Krishna and Balaram. So all these demons are sent by Kamsa to sort of kill Krishna and Balaram. So this demon in the shape of a calf is trying to mix in with the crowd. But what's interesting is now Krishna is killing a calf. Even killing a cow is in the Vedic culture is really like a heinous act to do. But now he's killing a calf, which is like a baby. It's like, imagine killing a human itself is bad, but you're killing babies. So Krishna is killing a calf. So how do we understand this? Krishna knows Bhakta Vatsala, right? One of the names of Krishna is Bhakta Vatsala. So Vatsala comes from the word Vatsa, or a calf. So just like a mother cow is so affectionate to her calves, she lick the calves in affection to sort of shower affection and clean the calf. So Krishna is known as Bhakta Vatsala. Just like a mother cow is so affectionate to the calf, Krishna is also really affectionate to his devotees. Now here Krishna is killing a cow or a calf. So how do you understand this? And you might say, okay, he didn't exactly kill it, he just whirled it in the air, and by that movement the calf sort of lost its life, and then it was a nice way to sort of take care of the demon. But still, like, the sentiment is you're killing a demon, demon, quote unquote demon. So how do we understand this? So of course, you might have answers like, okay, whatever Krishna does is for the benefit of everybody, all those standard answers that we might get. The demons are getting liberated, and so on. So in the purport of text 45, Prabhupada is actually saying that, text 43. So he killed the demon in such a way as to get the kapita fruits, so that he and Balaram and other boys could take advantage of the opportunity. So of course, as we see in all these pastimes of Krishna killing the demon, all these demons, he does it in such a way that there's a lesson for all of us. There's something positive that comes out of it. So when Krishna puts us through some struggles and challenges, at that point, it might not be really clear what Krishna is doing or why he's doing. But then once we go with the flow and we look back, and then we understand why Krishna does things the way he does it. So there's a reason why Krishna, the way he enacts his pastimes. And of course, we see in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Shikshamrita, he gives a breakdown of all the demons and what anarthas they represent. So they're basically symbolic of all the impurities that we carry in our heart. So Krishna is basically taking care of, just like Krishna is taking care of all the asuras, he's also taking care of the anarthas that are in our heart. So what's asura? This asura, what's in the form of a calf, he represents childish greed, childish mentality, which leads to greed and wicked activities. So all those things we do out of childish mentality. I mean, of course, childish mentality can have many aspects to it, but this talks about greed and wickedness that comes out of it. So basically, we're talking about the immature stages of Krishna consciousness. The early stages of Krishna consciousness, we may exhibit certain behavior which is not really the ideal or favorable for our advancement in Krishna consciousness. So just like we see in the stages of development of a child, initially the children, they have a certain behavior. They're like me, attention seeking, and they can also be a little greedy of attention and things like that. And nothing wrong with that. That's needed for that stage of development. But the problem is when people grow up and still hold on to that behavior, that's the problem. So in our Krishna conscious advancement, initially we might have certain behavior like a neophyte tendency, and there's nothing wrong with that. We can use that word neophyte in a really judgmental way, like neophyte, you neophyte. But initial stages, it's okay. That's needed for us to sort of learn, make mistakes, and grow. But the problem is when we hold on to that mindset. So like that, just like a child goes through stages of development, in Krishna Bhakti also, we go through certain stages of development. And these stages of development in Krishna Bhakti is actually dependent on our faith. So just like a child is growing physically, mentally, emotionally, we are also growing in Krishna consciousness. But that growth is not necessarily in terms of like our bodily growth or sort of other forms of growth. But what is that growth? How do we, if you have to draw parallels between the growth of like a progression of development of a child to like an adult and our advancement in Krishna consciousness, we have to draw the parallels. That parallel comes in terms of advancement, in terms of faith. So what is it that we grow in? It's not so much as acquiring knowledge, learning how to wear proper clothes, putting tilak, or acting like, quote unquote, like as a Vaishnava. But the growth is actually happening in terms of our faith. That is what is growing. So if someone is immature in Krishna consciousness, that maturity is in terms of their faith. That's where they're not really mature. So initial stages, we might, like when we are new to Krishna consciousness, we're learning about Krishna consciousness, and then we might be sort of enamored by the glitz and glamour of Krishna Bhakti, and we might develop certain childish tendencies in Krishna consciousness. In different ways we can develop that, either we might be like a kirtan and retreat junkie, where we go through different phases. You might be attending kirtans, you want to be in every kirtan possible, you want to be seen by people, or you want to attend different retreats. And, so that's okay. In initial stages, that's how we grow. But then later on, we can still hold on to these fascination for these lower rungs of Krishna consciousness. So just like Vatsasura was pretending to be a calf, we may also pretend to be a devotee, just by putting on a dhoti tilak like myself, and it doesn't make me a devotee. So we have to sort of advance. There's different layers of being a Vaishnava, the Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. And there's different ways our acharyas describe these three levels. And one of the ways in which they describe is in terms of faith. So at the Kanishta level, our faith is really weak. It's like komal shraddha, like really weak faith. And then as we grow in Krishna consciousness, we reach the Madhyama stage. Then our faith is stronger, but we may not be able to defeat opposing philosophies or principles in the Madhyama stage. And as we still keep growing, we reach the Uttama stage, the topmost devotee. And at that stage, not only our faith is rock solid, but we can also sort of able to not only just defeat, our mentality is not just to defeat, but harmonize opposing incongruent philosophies and how they sort of reconcile. So that's the stage of Uttama devotee. So the neophyte stage or the Kanishta stage, our faith is really not that strong. So because of that, there's a lot of anarthas that come about in our Krishna consciousness. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in Madhurya Kadambini of there's, like we were talking about different stages of progression, right, in terms of faith. It's our faith that evolves. So Rupa Goswami coins this beautiful verse, Adavshraddha Tato Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriya. So he talks about different stages of starting with Shraddha, going on to Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Adavshraddha Tato Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriya, and then Anartha Nivriti, and then Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, and so on. So these stages, it starts with Shraddha and then Sadhu Sangha and Bhajana Kriya, right? What is Sadhu Sangha? What is Bhajana Kriya? What is Anartha Nivriti? What is Ruchi? These are all nothing but faith, Shraddha. So it starts with Shraddha and they go on to other levels, but those other levels are nothing but solidified levels of faith. Just like you take sugar, like you take a sugar cane, right? There's like sugar in a sugar cane and you sort of extract it and it becomes a juice. Then you try to sort of thicken the juice, you sort of boil it and you thicken it, becomes a little more concentrated. And you keep heating and processing, it becomes more concentrated. And then from that, it becomes like a thick liquid. And from that, you come like gur, which is like a, I don't know what you say in English, but like a rock candy, or I forget how Prabhupada translate that. Huh? Jaggery, yeah. So like that, sugar becomes thicker and thicker, and its taste also becomes really sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. It's more refined. That's how our faith is. We keep churning and churning. Our faith becomes more stronger and stronger and stronger. So Rupa Goswami talks about these different stages of development. And similarly, on the same vein, Sri Vishwanath explains in his Madhurya Kadambini about how different stages of development. So he says in one of the stages, which is Bhajana Kriya. So from Shraddha, faith comes Sadhu Sangha, which is association of like-minded people and sadhus. And from that comes Bhajana Kriya. We start practicing Krishna consciousness. And then from Bhajana Kriya comes Anartha Nivriti. And Anartha Nivriti is pretty much one of the most dominant stages in our practice of Krishna consciousness. Anartha Nivriti is purifying of the heart. So in the stage of Bhajana Kriya, there's two sort of rungs or levels of Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is our devotional practice itself. So it's Anishtata Bhajana Kriya, which is unsteady devotional service, and then Nishtata Bhajana Kriya. So Nishtata Bhajana Kriya is like almost the same as Nishta, the platform of Nishta. So in what is that unsteady Anishtata Bhajana Kriya, Sri Vishwanath talks about 5 symptoms of what that unsteady devotional practice looks like. So he says first is Utsahamai. Utsahamai is that like initial enthusiasm we have as devotees, or in other words, like the pure devotee syndrome, PDS. Like you spend a few months in Krishna consciousness and you feel like you're like a pure devotee, you know. And there's one, like during Prabhupada's time, there's one young Prabhupada disciple, Adipurusha Prabhu, would be able to give us better examples in that regard. There was one young devotee who was started to learn Sanskrit. And in a few months, he thought he could correct Prabhupada. You know, he can correct Prabhupada's translations and Prabhupada's Sanskrit rendition and things like that. So initially, we might think that we are pure devotees. So like that, Vishwanath explains different types of Anishtata Bhajana Kriya. There's Utsamai, there's Ganatarala, you know, thick and thin, and so on. So, and there's, of course, there's like Vyuddha Vikalpa, indecision of the mind. We're really indecisive and the mental platform. And then we share Sangara, which is struggling with sense gratification, and Niyamakshama, which is inability to follow our vows and rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, and Taranga Rangini. So Taranga Rangini is more relevant to our discussion now. Taranga Rangini is one is riding the waves of Krishna consciousness, like all the benefits that come across in Krishna consciousness. So one is sort of enjoying all those benefits. So this Vatsasura is representative of the childish mentality due to which we become a little greedy of all that comes in Krishna consciousness. We become a little greedy of all the benefits, and we engage in behavior which is not suitable for Krishna consciousness. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita compares this to like a childish mentality. So So he talks about how in this stage of Krishna consciousness, one is really immature. And one of the qualities of immature childlike behavior is, by nature, children can only think of themselves. That is how they are in that stage of development. They're only thinking of me, my level of, what they need. And by nature, they have like a selfish kind of a mindset. And again, that's needed for that stage of development, that self-centered perspective that is really needed. Like Prabhupada talks about in Krishna book, there's like different levels of realizing God, which is like first like Annamaya stage, and then comes Pranamaya stage, and then comes Manomaya or Jnanamaya, and then Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. So in Annamaya stage of God realization, it's like a child, which is Anna literally means grain. Annamaya is like that, or consciousness of basic sustenance.
Sees God as food.
Exactly, seeing God as food. So that level of Krishna, just like a child can only think of, at the initial stages, a baby might not necessarily recognize their parents or siblings and so on. Baby can only recognize food. So one's realization of God and the world around us is just in terms of like food, Annamaya consciousness. And above that is like Manomaya consciousness, Pranamaya consciousness. And Pranamaya, like when the baby grows up, when it's like a toddler or like a young child, like 3 or 4, not only are they conscious of food, but they're also now conscious of their own life. If there's any danger, the child will go running to their parents. And then above that is Manomaya, right? And Manomaya stage 1 is now in the mental platform, and the child grows up more. And then above that is Jnanamaya or Vijnanamaya. So Prabhupada says the first 3 levels are materialistic levels of Krishna consciousness. Above that is Vijnanamaya. Vijnanamaya is like the introduction to Krishna conscious spiritual life. One is now exposed to spiritual life. And then above that, when we perfect that, that is Anandamaya. So just like we see Annamaya consciousness, a child can have really like a food-based consciousness. Like that, even in our Krishna consciousness, we can be really selfish and always thinking about our nourishment, our needs, and so on. Prashadam, yeah. We can only be fixated. I keep giving this example. Like one of my friends who was in Texas, for one, he was a student. And for 1 whole year, he went to a temple nearby just for Prashadam. He was not a devotee. He would just go for Prashadam. And he would tell me that I don't want anything else to do with the philosophy, Krishna consciousness. He just went for free food. And he kept doing that. And after a year, he just became such a fixed up devotee. He's like, if you see him now, he's like a really initiated devotee, really fixed up. And, so so it starts with that level of Krishna consciousness. One is really childish and a little greedy for more. And at this stage of Krishna consciousness, it's compared to like a shrunken consciousness. If you see a mentality of a child or consciousness of a neophyte devotee, at that stage, our consciousness is on a more like a shrunken level. So what that means, our consciousness is really, it's not that, it's compared to like as a glass of water as opposed to an ocean. In a glass of water, if you put like a spoon of salt, then right away it tastes really bad. But if in a big reservoir of water, it might not make such a big difference. So the initial stages of the consciousness is really like a shrunken consciousness. And at that stage, our ability to tolerate pain is a little lesser. Our ability to perceive, like Adipurusha Prabhu was saying, like to realize God is also really limited at that shrunken state of consciousness. So that immature stage of consciousness is hard for us to sort of see the Supreme, get the whole picture. Hare Krishna Prabhu. To see the whole picture, it's hard for us to see the whole picture. So when our heart is filled with when at the immature stage, when our heart is filled with selfish motive, it's hard for us to sort of see beyond our own level of Krishna consciousness. Like in the materialistic life, we're used to sort of my house, my spouse, my this and that, right? My job, and that's materialistic lifestyle, like Grihamedi versus Grihastha. And then we enter Krishna consciousness and we carry that same mentality in Krishna consciousness also, like my advancement, my guru, my this, my group, my that, and things like that. Although it's sort of like in spirituality, you might think, okay, it's spiritual life, but still it's that same selfish perspective that children can behave, the greedy perspective of life, like more, just we think just by attending more kirtan retreats, more, this and that, I'm a pure devotee. So at that stage, our heart is really filled with selfish needs. And when our heart is sort of centered in that, it's hard for us to see a bigger picture or to even think of other devotees, other Vaishnavas. It's hard for us to sort of care for other Vaishnavas. Like one of the levels in one of the criteria in which our acharyas characterize Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttamadhikari is this: a Kanishta devotee sees only their relationship with Krishna. And for them, other devotees, they're like, I could care less about them. It's just me and Krishna. Why should I think about other devotees? That's Kanishta mindset. And Madhyama level devotee, they're thinking, okay, then Prema Maitri Kripa Upeksha. What is that verse from Bhagavatam? Ishwareshu tad Ishwareshu tad. I don't know, I'm forgetting that verse. Balisheshu. Prema Maitri Kripa Upeksha Sakaroti Sam Madhyama. So Madhyama Adhikari sees the world around him or her in 4 levels: Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha. So for the Supreme Lord, he has Prema, Maitri. He has, for the peers, he has Maitri, friendship, Prema, Maitri, Kripa. For the innocent, especially if you're a preacher, if you see some innocent, you're really merciful. Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha. And for those who are envious, he or she will respectfully ignore and avoid them. So the Kanishta level, one is just thinking of my relationship with the Supreme, I could care less about other devotees. Why do I need to care about them? And Madhyama stage, one is thinking of Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha. And at the Uttama stage, a pure devotee sees every living entity in terms of their relationship with the Supreme as a spirit souls. So at the beginning stage of Krishna consciousness, one can have this really selfish, my space. When you move into an ashram, you're really guarded about our space. You can put up an embankment around us, don't encroach into my space. We're really territorial. And I was sharing with one devotee that the whole purpose of ashram life is to train us from that mindset, to train us how to not be in a territorial mindset. If you need to be in a territorial mindset, why not just be in your own space at home? In ashram life, it trains us how not to be in that territorial mindset. Ashram is just to sort of give up that attachment to our space, my things like that. So Vatsasura represents that mentality of greed, childish greed behavior, of how not to be into that mindset. And then when we grow in Krishna consciousness, what happens is in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami in Dashashwamedha Ghat, he's giving a whole series of instructions to Rupa Goswami. And one of the instructions Lord Chaitanya is giving Rupa Goswami, he's talking about how Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagyavana Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasade by Bhakti Lada Peach, that somehow by the fortune of Guru and Krishna, the soul is wandering from one lifetime to another, one universe to another, is wandering and getting kicked and bouncing here and there. By some good fortune, a living entity comes across a guru, and that guru plants the Bhakti Lata beads, the seed of the Bhakti Lata in the heart of the devotee. And by careful watering, Shravana and Kirtana, that Bhakti Lata beach grows and grows into like a small sapling and then a creeper. And then that creeper grows and penetrates through the layers of the material universe and then crosses the Brahman, Viraja river, finally reaches Goloka Vrindavan, and where it reaches the lotus feet of Krishna. And like a creeper, if you see a creeper sort of encircles whatever it can find, that the creeper of bhakti then encircles Radha Krishna's lotus feet and really holds on to the lotus feet with dear life. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, it's not so easy. When we water Shravanam Kirtanam and the Bhakti Lata creeper is growing, we are also watering something else. Along with the creeper, something else is also growing on the side. For those of you who are gardeners, you might notice when you have like tulsi, when you're sort of planting tulsi or other, you'll see small weeds growing up. And initially they look like the plant that you're trying to grow. So you can't just simply uproot, especially if it's a tulsi, baby tulsi, you can't simply uproot it. You just have to wait and see what it is. After a few weeks, you know how like weeds, they have like a grass-like longer blades. So you know it's not tulsi. I've had tulsi, so I know I used to wait to see if it's a weed or not. So you don't want to keep watering the weed because then that sucks all the nutrition from the tulsi, from the soil. You have to keep adding fertilizer to the soil so that the tulsi is getting nutrition. So you don't want to keep watering the weeds. So like that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying that one should be careful to not water the wrong. We might think that our anarthas are bhakti. And one of the anarthas is pratishta. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Nishiddhachar kutinati jiva hamsana, labha puja pratishtadi upashaka gana. that as one is watering some anarthas in form of nishiddachar, like some unwanted, unfavorable behavior, like nishiddachar, kutinati, deceit, jiva hamsana, committing violence to other living entities, even subtle violence, emotional abuse, kutinati, nishidachar, kutinati, jiva hamsana, laba, puja, pratishtha. Laba is like desire for like profit, puja is like worship, and pratishtha is like fame and recognition. So one can be greedy for all these things, like laba, want more and more. The childish mentality, like what Susura is representing. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying one has to be really careful in how one's advancing in Krishna consciousness. So don't encourage these behavior, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying. Don't water these unwanted weeds or creepers that also grow along with our bhakti. So there's bhakti, our desire to advance in Krishna consciousness and serve. And along that, there's also these weeds of desire for fame, prestige, and so on. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is warning us on how not to do that. So like we were discussing, Vatsasura is like a childish mentality, which is really selfish. And we can think in our initial stages of development, like it's all about my advancement. How can I advance more? And it's so common, even for advancing devotees in Madhyama level. And probably it's also in me. That's why I'm recognizing it. But it's so common that even when we are like 10, 20, 30 years, it's so easy to be in that mindset of how can I advance more? And sometimes for me, it's a little sad to see how we can have a little like a cliquish mentality in Krishna consciousness. We tend to sort of hang out only in circles, only thinking about my advancement and things like that. So please, please, please don't be selfish. Don't be selfish in Krishna consciousness. And I say this not with an attitude of condescension. This is something I tell myself. Please ask other devotees, how are you doing? How's your Krishna consciousness? Are you here? Are you listening sufficiently? How can I serve you? Is there anything? And sometimes being selfless doesn't necessarily mean that we have to give something to someone. Just be there for people. Just try to listen. If they're saying something, just listen what they have to say. It doesn't necessarily that I have something to provide, I have something to give. All it takes is to just listen to some other Vaishnava. Just see what and that's the best thing sometimes we can give someone. Niranjana Swami, His Holiness Niranjana Swami, he talks a lot about Vaishnav care. His Holiness Radhana Swami, his whole modus operandi for this temple and other centers is Vaishnav care, just being there for other devotees. So please don't be selfish in your Krishna consciousness. That's the life of a preacher. That's the life of a book distributor. When you go on Harinam Sankirtan, we learn how to sort of be in tune for others' needs. We meet new people in the street. And naturally, you were thinking, how can I benefit this person? How can I give? And that is the essence of Krishna consciousness. How can I give? It's not so much as taking my space, my territory. How can I advance my guru, my this and my that? It's the same level of materialistic mindset, just a disguise, like Vatsasura is disguising himself like a calf and trying to sort of kill the Krishna bhakti. Like that, our spirituality is also materialism disguised. And we're thinking my advancement, my this, me. So please, please, please don't be in such a territorial or selfish mindset. Just try to think of how can I serve? Look around, you see other devotees, try to see where they're at. What do you like? How do you, what are your preferences? Try to hear from them. What's your story? Where do you come from? And just that's all. Sometimes it's so simple. That's all we need to do to build communities, to build Vaishnav Sangha. That's all it's needed to just get out of that selfish perspective, our own space. And our Guru Maharaj says that sometimes all we need is to grow in Krishna consciousness is just take a tiny step out of our comfort zone. And that's where maximum growth happens, is that one step outside of our comfort zone. So with this, now it's 7:50, maybe we can take some reflections, any corrections, any questions, or whatever we have to further enhance this topic of Krishna killing Vatsasura. Any thoughts from our senior devotees? Yes, Adipusha, I'll repeat what you have to say. Okay, sure.
Right, Krishna. One presentation, you're providing us with apprehension that there are lower stages and higher stages, and what the names of them are and what they look like. And one important question might be, how do you get there? How does faith? You said faith is both. So Scripture says, faith comes by hearing. We glorify Krishna. Krishna is so wonderful. faith comes by hearing. Krishna is so wonderful that he's provided the means for our purification. Shrunken Krishna. By hearing the Bhagavatam, Krishna cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from our heart, takes away that selfishness. But it's by hearing about the glories of the Lord and glorifying Krishna, he allows us to become uplifted from the lower stages, which is kind of scary. Understand that those are there. Wow, I'm like that, and how to get out of it. But just by hearing, so they come into the class and hearing from the devotees and hearing from scripture. That's how Krishna works. Just like you go in the sunshine, you get a suntan, you just expose yourself to it. The process is there. We'll go to Prana.
Thank you so much, Adi Pusha Prabhu, for, as usual, beautifully enlightening us. Adi Pusha Prabhu was saying we might be at neophyte level, but how do we advance? Advancement comes in terms of faith. And how do we get faith? Adi Pusha Prabhu was saying faith comes by hearing. Yeah, Adi Pusha is quoting scripture saying that faith comes by hearing. And then we hear faithfully, Shushushadda Danasya Vasudeva Kataruchi. So when we hear with faith, then it gives us Vasudeva Kataruchi. Then we develop taste in Krishna consciousness just by faithfully hearing. I was actually talking with another devotee who asked me the same question, like how do we develop faith in terms, especially when we have certain doubts in Krishna consciousness? And that was one of the things I said, just like Adi Pusha Prabhu, is faith comes when you associate with those who have faith, then it rubs in our heart. And the other thing is faith also comes by just continuing with our Krishna consciousness. When we practice, and the scripture says that do this and this will be the result. And you do it and you see the result, and that experience itself gives us faith. Just like you might have a headache and a doctor tells you take this pill and you don't know what this is and you don't have that faith if it works or not. But still by association, you just take it and you take that pill and then your headache goes away, and that experience further lends more faith. So thank you so much, Adi Pusha Prabhu. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
My question is that selfless mindset where we're not like constantly thinking of my own advantage, but still prioritizing our sadhana so that our cup can be full to give selflessly.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that wonderful question. So the topic was...
Can you repeat that question? We couldn't hear it.
Yeah, I was just going to repeat that. So the question was, on one side, I'm paraphrasing for my own understanding. On one side, we have to be selfless. We should not be selfish. But the question is, on the other side, how do we also take care of our needs? There's a certain amount of self-care that is needed. So how do we balance the two, right? So there's self-care and there's selfishness. So those two are two different things. So sometimes we can engage in self-care also out of selflessness. We can engage in self-care not because it's for me. Sometimes, especially as a preacher, if you have people you're mentoring or if you're a guru, you have to take care of yourself, not because you need it, but others benefit from that. So even self-care can be done out of selflessness. So sometimes we can take care of our needs, not because it's for me. Sometimes we can take care of our needs because maybe this will help me serve Krishna. How can I be a better devotee for Krishna? How can I serve more? And like you said, we need to have our cup full also. So sometimes especially in our Hare Krishna movement, we have so many services. And in order to do justice to our services, sometimes it's necessary to draw certain boundaries that this is how much I can do. We have to be practical and realistic that, okay, I can only do these many services and I want to do a good job at this because Krishna is the beneficiary of these services. So we can take care of our needs, but that can also be done in a selfless mood. But then to extend your question, how do we get there? How do we sort of become selfless and how do we get away from a selfish mindset? So it's a process, like Rupa Goswami says, Adho Shraddha Tato Sadhu Sango Ta Bhajani Kriya. So it's the development of faith and higher levels of faith in Krishna consciousness. Our consciousness expands and expands, like we talked about Annamaya, Manomaya. It expands and expands. And the more it expands, the circle is wider. It can fit more things. And the circle gets wider, even more wider. And then it can fit more things. The circle is small, it can hardly fit anything but ourselves. But if the circle is really big, then it can accommodate the whole world. That's why pure devotee, it's a Vasudeva Kutumbakam. For a pure devotee, the whole world is a family. They have such a big consciousness, big circle. They see everybody as part and parcels of Krishna. And like Chanakya Pandit says, one of the symptoms of knowledge is you You see other people's suffering as your own suffering, and your happiness as others' happiness. Thank you. Are there other questions, comments? Anything from the chat or online audience?
Angelica has her hand raised. Angelica.
Yes, Angelica.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Back to the topic of self-care versus selfishness. I just wanted to bring up this something that I was reflecting on recently, which is also while we are aiming to be friendly and have a friendly attitude towards everyone, ultimately we cannot be a friend to everyone in terms of association or in terms of relationships, just because our moods, because naturally there's variety, our moods will just not align with everybody else's or every other devotee's moods. And that was actually a big realization for me, because it was causing me a lot of stress. And then I actually found out that it doesn't mean that I cannot have a friendly attitude, but it may mean that I cannot be everybody's friend in terms of relationship, but I can still wish them well and pray for them.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So there's being a friend and friendly attitude. So that's Angelica is drawing a difference between the two. Is we may not be able to be friends with everybody. We also have to be practical in seeking like-minded association. We can have a friendly disposition. And another meaning of being friendly, what does it mean being a friend or friendly? Is nirvaira. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, mat karma krit mat parma mat nirvaira sarva bhutishu. So anyway, he says nirvaira sarva bhutishu. The nirvaira is without animosity or envy. So being friendly means not to have animosity or envy towards others. So that's also another way we can be friendly towards, like you were saying, Angelica, a well-wisher. Any other thoughts, comments? Yes, Evan Prabhu.
I don't know if I'll go a little closer.
Yeah.
So my question, Guru, is regarding, I mean, it's kind of more like a comment, but I just want to get some of your thoughts about it. So when you were speaking about greed and how we shouldn't be too greedy about my advancement and, you know, all these things. But then I've just been hearing a lot in Shastra that the only price to attain pure bhakti is the greed to attain it. So actually, I could say more about that, but I'll leave it.
Thank you. Again, such a beautiful, beautiful point, because you're talking about how not to be greedy. But then Evan Prabhu is saying, but Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitomati, that the only price to pay that is this intense greed, tata laulyam api moolam ekalam, janma koti sukritirna labhyate. That Krishna Bhakti is something that by janma koti, lifetimes and lifetimes of pious activity cannot purchase Krishna Bhakti. Only price to pay is laulyam. So then how do we reconcile the two? So initially our greed is more in terms of greed for materialistic things. You know, either in material life you're greedy for materialistic thing, or in spiritual life you're greedy for labha, puja, pratishtadi. And as the heart gets more and more purified, then one becomes akinchana bhakta. One becomes one's only possession is Krishna. One is not trying to possess fame, fortune, this and that. One's only possession is Krishna. So the greed is still there, but now the greed is for Krishna. So that kind of a greed is really good, where one is greedy for more service. One is greedy to satisfy Krishna. Like in the Krishna book, it says that the gopis would be lusty for Krishna. What is that lust? That lust is like not exactly the lust as we know it. They're really burning in desire to serve Krishna. They're like literally restless and burning. How can I give more? How can I serve? How can I serve? You know, having sleepless nights. Maybe I should do this more. So like this one is really intensely greedy, not necessarily for labha, puja, pratishtadi, but one is greedy for like in that separation from Krishna, that I cannot even spend a moment away from Krishna. I just need this. I need more. I not only just need it, but more and more and more of service. So that's the kind of greed one needs to sort of serve. But even for a pure devotee, they're not necessarily thinking like Prabhupada when he came to the West. He was a pure devotee, but he was not necessarily greedy in terms of his own aggrandizement. He was always greedy for increasing the temples, increasing the devotees, increasing the number of initiates. He was greedy in that sense, but giving to Krishna. Whatever he would get, he would pass it on to Krishna. So that kind of a greed is really helpful. Any other last comments or thoughts? Yes.
That we're not necessarily like, we need to identify what we're greedy for, because if we're like, we can be greedy for service, that's, you know, that's the goal. But if we're greedy for like the pleasure that comes from connecting with Krishna, if we're greedy for the ecstatic symptoms, if we're greedy, then that's actually selfish greed. Because actually a pure devotee, you know, I can't remember the past time he was waving the chamara and he saw the peacock, or no, he started crying and he couldn't
Mukunda.
see. Like, yeah, okay, that.
He saw the peony
Yeah,
passed out. Is that the pastime you're saying?
I just remember there was a
Oh, you're
devotee
talking
who-
about one of the servants of Krishna who was fanning and he
that's
had
it.
tears and he was cursing because that was creating an obstacle in his service.
It was an ecstatic symptom, you know, it's something that actually, you know, a neophyte devotee like myself is like chasing after, like, Krishna, please let me taste your holy name, like, please let me feel some ecstasy from this, you know, but that's actually selfish greed, even though
Beautiful.
it's spiritual.
Yeah, for pure devotee, if they get pleasure, find that as an obstacle. That pleasure is an obstacle in serving Krishna. So for them, they don't even like that pleasure. Like I was just listening to a few days ago, a Japa lecture by Mahatma Prabhu, His Grace Mahatma Prabhu. And he's talking about how to develop a service attitude in chanting the holy name. He says, sometimes we chant the holy name because we enjoy how we feel, you know. So he said that even that is also like a, you know, you're looking at.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna.
So anyway, it looks like that's the end of our discussion, unless do we have like time for 30 seconds of any other comments, questions? Bhakti Center says this childish and childlike. Beautiful. There's a difference between childish being childish and childlike. Andrea says, be careful of PDS, pure devotee syndrome. And okay, so with that, we can maybe conclude our discussion. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Godruma Prabhu ki jai. Prabhu, please put us on the donation box.
Sure.
Jai, thank you. Faith comes by hearing and also by giving class. Godruma Prabhu. Great class, wasn't it? Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Drive safely.